Most people spend their entire lives either defending the ego or trying to destroy it. Both approaches miss the point entirely. Because the ego is not your enemy, and it's not your identity. It's a tool. And like any tool, the question is not whether you have it, it's whether you know how to use it. Three traditions examine the ego with extraordinary precision, and all three arrived at the same fundamental conclusion. Freud described the ego as the mediator, the part of the psyche that navigates between what you want and what the world allows. Without it, chaos. With too much of it, rigidity. Jung went deeper. He described the ego as the center of conscious awareness, real, necessary, but limited. The ego knows what it knows. It cannot, by definition, know what lies outside its awareness. This is the core of the Jungian problem with the ego. Not that it exists, but that it consistently overestimates the size of its own territory. It mistakes the map for the entire landscape. Buddha made the most radical observation. The ego, the fixed, permanent, independent I, is a construction, not an illusion in the sense of being fake. A construction in the sense of being assembled from memories, from roles, from narratives about who you are and what you deserve and what threatens you. Assembled so automatically and so consistently that it feels solid, but it is not solid. It is a process, constantly being rebuilt, constantly being updated. And the moment you can see that, something changes. When the ego is not seen clearly, it creates three specific problems that appear in virtually every tradition that has examined it. First, it confuses the role with the person. The ego builds its identity largely from roles: parent, professional, partner, achiever. When those roles are threatened or removed, the ego experiences it as an existential threat. Not just, my job is at risk. I am at risk. The role and the person have been conflated. Second, it defends rather than learns. An ego that has not been examined treats challenges to its beliefs as threats to its survival. This produces the pattern most people recognize in others and rarely in themselves. The inability to receive feedback, the immediate defensiveness when questioned, the need to be right more than to be accurate. Not because the person is weak, because the ego has not been separated from the identity. Third, it creates suffering through comparison. The ego constantly measures itself against others and against the version of itself it believes it should be. This comparison is never neutral. It is almost always either inflating or deflating, and both produce suffering because both are based on a fiction. The inflated ego and the deflated ego are the same ego, operating in the same pattern. Working with the ego does not mean eliminating it. It means developing the capacity to observe it. Jung called this developing the observing self, the part of consciousness that can watch the ego without being completely identified with it. Three practices, drawn from Jung, from Buddhist tradition, and from Stoic philosophy, that actually develop this capacity. First, the name it practice. When you notice a strong emotional reaction, defensiveness, anger, shame, the need to be right, name it specifically, not, I am angry. The ego is protecting itself right now. This linguistic shift is small, the effect is significant. It creates a tiny gap between you and the reaction, the beginning of the observing self. In 2007, neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman at UCLA published research showing that labeling an emotional state, affect labeling, reduces amygdala activation measurably. Naming the ego's reaction reduces its grip. Both traditions and neuroscience agree on this. Second, the role inventory. Once a week, write down the roles you are currently identified with: professional, parent, partner, achiever, victim, expert. Then ask, which of these would I be devastated to lose? Not sad, devastated. Those are the roles the ego has conflated with identity. That recognition is the beginning of separation. Third, the feedback practice. Once a month, ask someone you trust for one honest piece of feedback about a blind spot they observe in you. Not to act on it immediately, to notice the ego's reaction to receiving it. The reaction itself is the data. Freud, Jung, and Buddha examined the ego from different angles, and all three arrived at the same place. The ego is real, it is necessary, and it is not the whole of who you are. The problem is not its existence. The problem is identification, the confusion of the ego with the self, the role with the person, the construction with the reality. Three practices, naming the reaction, the role inventory, and the feedback practice, develop the one capacity that all three traditions agree is essential: the ability to observe the ego without being entirely inside it, not to destroy it, to see it, and in seeing it, to have a choice about whether it runs the show. If you'd like to support this work, you can do so by becoming a member. Support is never expected, but always deeply appreciated.